It's time for our stock debate. And the question we ask you today is, will you buy Kotak Mahindra Bank after the acquisition of ING Vysya Bank? We've got market expert ANAND and PRAKASH of ALTAMOUNT Capital Management joining us on the show. Also joining us is Anuj. Anuj, if I can come to you first, and this is something Anuj has been pointing out through the day. It's a great bank. And after the merger, it became the fourth largest private sector bank behind ICICI, HDFC, ICICI and Axis. But valuation-wise, it's valued as much as Axis, which is double its size, makes more money. How would you look at it?
Anand?
Well, like, as you pointed out, what Anuj has been saying is absolutely right. Purely on the basis of valuation, it is exactly half on most parameters with the same market cap. Of course, the difference is that you have Mr. Uday Kotak running it, which is not there in the other banks. But then you're not likely to pay, a couple of lakh crores premium just for that in the near term. So very broadly, I think the market is pricing it to perfection for the moment. However, if you have a 5 to 10 year view, will it continue to grow and grow very well? I have absolutely no doubt on that.
Okay. Prakash?
I think I agree to the fact that it is overpriced. I mean, Kotak was always on a price to book value also in that 4.5 X zone, which is phenomenally high. But the fact that Kotak has had the scorching pace of growth ever since it converted itself into a bank, and then there was this missing piece which kind of comes as a bonus on the SME side. So together, the franchise is absolutely strong, and they've inorganically grown to the extent which a private sector bank would have taken at least about 3 years to grow in terms of doubling their branch presence on the north and the south. I mean, there's no overlap, 68% in the south, 67% in the north for Kotak. So on those parameters, it does seem very attractive, but I think it's a little bit of exuberance, which the market is kind of...
But as Anand pointed out, and as the market keeps telling us, it's Mr. Uday Kotak. He seemed to be a man with vision. He seemed to be a man of strategy. He seemed to be a man who perhaps can make the bank, could be one day the largest bank in the country if things go right for him.
No, possibly. But, there are challenges also which we need to look at while we go along this valuation curve. ING Vysya has been in the south a very strong SME focused bank, and south is still a caste driven market in terms of people bank with banks which are comfortably owned by that particular set of promoters and stuff like that. Though it was ING out there, but Vysya was always the driving force. So whether Kotak is able to leverage on that franchise at the same pace is going to be a question. Axis has a very different business model, that it's more capital market oriented, more M&A driven, more focus on two large transactions. So I think you can't really compare the two, though you're paying the same kind of valuation at this point in time. So Kotak would probably grow faster because it's smaller, it's nimble.
Also because I think people don't change banks easily, right, as customers. Yes. So if you're already a customer of the ING Vysya franchise, Kotak could have probably been able to reach out to those customers independently if it was to try, with a lot more difficulty. Yeah. Now that you're a captive customer of ING Vysya, even if the management changes, the name changes, etc., you're not going to jump to change your bank unless you don't get the service that you want. Yeah. So in a sense, you've acquired this very large set of customers, which not just time, but even otherwise effort might not have helped you acquire, because they were already, like you said, aligned with, let's say, banks that sort of reflected their communities.
True. No, in fact, one thing that goes in favor of the merged entity is the CASA franchise is not dilutive, in the sense, unlike Bank of Rajasthan and ICICI Bank and HDFC Central Bank.
Both of them have high levels.
No, so they are, in fact, it's not good. What had happened with HDFC and Central Bank and the Central Bank of Punjab was that came with a very small CASA franchise. HDFC was huge, so it actually diluted the combined thing.
Whereas in this case, both of them have, I think, almost the same. Yes. So you called it a bonus, Prakash. It's a bonus that's also come in, would you say, fairly cheaply? I think that the trick here is really the valuation, right? And they've managed to get ING Vysya, which is a valued franchise, at a fairly low premium of just about 16% or so to the stock price. But if you look at the book value multiple bits, it's far lower than some of the previous deals that have taken place.
Oh, absolutely. It's one-time market cap upon CASA. If you were to look at, because CASA is a big parameter which you look at when you're acquiring a bank. So market cap on CASA ratio is just one time in this case, whereas it was 1.9 in the case of HDFC Bank.
Yeah. So one could argue that those deals took place, at a different time, when the economy and the markets were in a different mood. But nonetheless, this is a very, very competitive purchase.
Cheap deal.
This is a very cheap.
Kotak might say that this is no distressed sale, but there's an element of that clearly from ING's point of view.
The exit that ING was always looking out for has happened, and it made ING also get into a win-win of sorts, because sometime back it was supposed to be at 0.8 times. The ratio was supposed to be much higher. It's at 0.725. So which is also. So I think it's a win-win at this point in time. The merged entity would probably be valued slightly better at a premium, but I think it's still kind of, beyond this, buying into it at this point, not really.
Yeah, so Anand, the complementarities aside, which in itself is a fairly strong point, and we've discussed the last 24 hours, we focused the last 24 hours on that. It's really quite the fact that Kotak got this very cheaply, isn't it?
Well, a couple of points here. One, I think HDFC did a very bad deal in the last couple of acquisitions they had. They were almost desperate in terms of trying to make sure that Axis or somebody else did not buy the two smaller banks. They had an option to buy them, and they were much smaller. They gave up on that, and then they were paid a huge premium, which was unwarranted. Just tells you how useful it can be to have a person at the top who's an investment banker par excellence. So as far as the valuation is concerned, I think there is no question the deal is extremely attractive. The challenge, however, that I see is exactly this SME franchise. Whatever one knows of Mr. Kotak, he is an extremely, extremely conservative banker. If you look at the way that the bank has run, it was one of the first banks that before 2008 started to move off from the market. It left off it lost market share even in things like two-wheeler financing. It gave up doing smaller ticket loans much before the credit cycle turned, and all of which proved him to be right. The question is that whether the same management will now be able to adapt to the fact that you are lending to SMEs where the level of security that you have against the transaction is far smaller, perhaps even ephemeral, and where a lot of relationship banking would be going on, presumably, unless ING has changed a lot in terms of the way that Vysya used to run. The fact of the matter is that a lot of SME banking is not necessarily extremely secure. And that is something that we'll have to see how the management adapts to. Either they have two different means of looking at, two different groups running the bank separately for a very, very long time till culturally the integration happens, or you will find that, the SME franchise may start to drift off, and that would take away a lot of the positives from the deal.
All right, so let's get to the price at this point in time of Kotak's share itself, Anand. Do you think it has run up a bit too much, and that at this point, even though this is a compelling buy from an acquisition point of view, Kotak's done all the right things with regards to ING Vysya, from a stock price point of view, this is not the time to get into the stock. If you're invested, great, but if you're not, stay away?
Difficult call on that, but very broadly, if you look at valuations, I would agree. But then, valuations tend to remain sticky. I mean, if you look at HDFC, for example, they have consistently remained at a premium to every other bank in the market, and and that the valuation premium continues. So if the Kotak Bank also continues to perform consistently across the next few quarters, there is no reason why you should assume that the valuation gap will not continue to remain. However, if you were to look at Axis, I think, obviously it is looking far more attractive vis-a-vis Kotak or any of the other larger banks right now, for the simple reason that all the metrics look the same, at least optically, and yet the valuations are far lower. So, are there better options? Yes. If you are already invested in it, would you get out? Perhaps not necessarily. Would you put fresh money in? Right now, the way the market is, you would put fresh money into almost everything, isn't it? Valuations be done.
Well, do you agree with that, Prakash?
I think that's the mood of the market very clearly. But yes, the merged entity could probably start fetching a little bit of a premium over what Kotak traditionally has received, and which is where I think everybody is still wanting to buy a piece of that. So that's where you see this rush to get into Kotak even at this point in time. But I think the froth will settle in a bit into and then if they are able to clock some decent growth and the integration is swift enough, that's going to be a game changer.
So is it a buy at this price?
For me, no.
It isn't. Yeah.
Okay, and just going beyond the deal, I think the deal is also perhaps to some extent responsible for the rally that we see in the market, because it just made everything look brighter. More South Indian banks getting a lot of focus today. Would you think they're all up in for play, or do you think that this is just a one deal, the next one could take a long time coming?
No, it would take some time to get the brides to be ready for any sort of future marriages to be announced, because it's not so easy for every bank to kind of start looking at this. But and some of the types of Karnataka Bank have been denying it so vocally, but still we keep on hearing about it as the first bank that runs up every time there's a merger. And on a lighter note,
this also puts pressure on the acquirers or potential acquirers, because if Kotak
I was just going to say, it's not just the brides, the grooms also.
But that I would expect that to come from the PSU side now. The consolidation wave is actually going to be forced more on the PSU side.
But some of that could be incremental, right? For SBI wanting to merge some of its subsidiaries, but that's incremental in some ways.
So SBI could also look at a non-subsidiary bank getting merged within itself. We've been hearing about Syndicate Bank, for example, as one of the best suitors for that. So you have some of these banks like Dena Bank, which will competitively doesn't make sense for them to go as standalone entities anymore.
Okay.
And also the question is, how many of these coming together will be as complementary as this one seems to be, right? And how many of them will be able to do what Uday has, which is get a great deal at a great price.
Yeah, on a lighter note, I was talking about the common denominator between Century and Bank of Punjab's merger and ING is Shailendra Bhandari. He used to head both these banks. You need to look at where he's going next.
I also want to look at it from the ING Vysya point of view. Is there any arbitrage to play at this point in time, given the number of Kotak shares that you will get, in exchange for ING Vysya shares?
Not beyond 860.
Is there a sort of a trade to happen or trade waiting to happen on ING Vysya?
It existed in the morning.
Now it's closed out,
anymore.
Right?
It's closed out now. Yeah. Also, Menika, keep in mind, if you buy ING Vysya Bank with an arbitrage angle, in that case you carry the risk that by the time Kotak Mahindra Bank shares come to your account, in that case the price of Kotak also should be at the price at which you bought ING Vysya Bank. So that's
fair enough. I know, but I'm just asking if that's a trade.
There's a minor arbitrage which still exists.
All right. So there we've got it. A mixed view on whether you should get into Kotak at this point or not. Anand says the mood of the market is buy everything. Prakash is saying be cautious on whether you want to buy Kotak. For him, it's definitely not a buy at this price. We'll leave this debate there.